Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be taking a look at 7 rarest motorcycles from the 1960s. Number 7. BMW R69S. The BMW R69S is like the holy grail of 1960s motorcycles. Rare, elegant, and undeniably cool. Built between 1960 and 1969, it was the pinnacle of BMW's engineering at the time, a machine that blended performance with that signature German reliability. With only about 11,000 units ever produced, finding one today is like stumbling upon a mint-condition vinyl of the Beatles' first album at a garage sale. Technically possible, but highly unlikely. What made the R69S special wasn't just its rarity but its sheer capability. It packed a 594cc air-cooled boxer twin engine that cranked out 42 horsepower, modest by today's standards but plenty for its era. BMW claimed a top speed of around 110 miles per hour, which, considering the highways of the 60s weren't exactly NASCAR tracks, made it one of the fastest production motorcycles of its time. More importantly, it had a reputation for silky smooth power delivery, thanks to BMW's meticulous engineering. That horizontally opposed twin setup wasn't just for looks, it gave the bike a lower center of gravity, making it shockingly stable even at high speeds. Of course, performance is only part of the story. The R69S was built like a tank, but had the grace of a Grand Tourer. It featured BMW's signature Earl's fork front suspension, which, instead of diving under braking like telescopic forks, actually lifted slightly, improving stability. That meant riders could push the bike hard without worrying about it turning into an unplanned physics experiment. In a world of high-tech motorcycles with electronic everything, the R69S is a reminder that sometimes simplicity wins. Number 6. Honda CB450 Black Bomber. The Honda CB450 Black Bomber is one of those rare gems from the 1960s that makes vintage motorcycle collectors weak in the knees. It wasn't just another bike. It was Honda's way of saying, hey, we can do big twins too. At a time when British and American bikes were dominating the streets with their thumping, oil-leaking monsters, Honda rolled out the CB450 in 1965, packing an advanced DOHC parallel twin engine, a move that was borderline rebellious for its time. Most manufacturers stuck to pushrod engines, but Honda wanted to show off its engineering prowess, and they did. With 43 horsepower at 8,500 RPM, the CB450 had serious bite for a middleweight. It could easily outrun many 650cc machines, which annoyed the competition to no end. The bike featured a torsion bar valve spring system, which basically meant Honda was over-engineering things just to flex on everyone. The Black Bomber nickname came from its early model's dark paint and aggressive styling. It wasn't flashy, but it had the kind of understated cool that made people take a second look. Plus, it didn't leak oil like a Harley or vibrate itself into pieces like some British twins. Despite its engineering brilliance, the CB450 struggled in the US market. Riders who were loyal to big-bore American V-twins or British cafe racers weren't ready to accept that a small Honda could keep up. The bike also had a tall stance and a relatively high price tag, making it a tough sell. Today, finding a well-preserved Black Bomber is a challenge. They're rare, desirable, and a perfect example of how Honda changed the motorcycle world, one high-revving, oil-tight, brilliantly engineered machine at a time. Number 5. Triumph Bonneville T120. The Triumph Bonneville T120 from the 1960s is one of those motorcycles that makes enthusiasts weak in the knees. Named after the Bonneville salt flats to flaunt its speed potential, this machine was the poster child of the British biking scene. It wasn't just about looking cool, though it did that effortlessly. It packed serious performance for its time. With its 650cc parallel twin engine and twin carburetors, it could hit speeds that made riders feel like they were pushing the limits of physics, at least by 1960s standards. What makes the 1960s Bonneville T120 rare today is the simple fact that most of them were either ridden into the ground or modified beyond recognition. Back then, motorcycles weren't treated like collectibles. They were meant to be ridden hard. The T120 was a favorite among racers, custom builders, and those who had a knack for accidentally redlining their engines. Many Bonneville owners stripped them down for cafe racing, chopped them up for chopper builds, or just rode them until the engine gave up. Finding an original, unmodified model today is like finding a mint-condition vinyl record that somehow escaped being scratched at 100 house parties. The Bonneville T120 wasn't just fast, it had style. The classic teardrop fuel tank, the low-slung seat, and the elegant twin exhausts made it one of the most handsome bikes of its era. It also had a certain charm, British engineering that sometimes worked flawlessly and sometimes reminded you who was really in charge. Today, a well-preserved 1960s T120 is a collector's dream, a rolling piece of motorcycling history that still turns heads. Number 4. Moto Guzzi V7 Special. The Moto Guzzi V7 Special from the 1960s is one of those rare gems that motorcycle collectors dream about but almost never find. This was the Italian brand's first serious attempt at a big displacement, touring-capable motorcycle, and it did not disappoint. While most American riders were busy choosing between Harley-Davidson and British twins, Moto Guzzi quietly rolled out the V7 Special, a bike that combined European finesse with the kind of durability you'd expect from a tank. Curiously, this thing was built like it could survive an apocalypse, and with its shaft-driven rear wheel, it almost required less maintenance than a household toaster. Under the fuel tank, the V7 Special packed a 703cc, 90-degree V-twin engine, an unusual layout at the time, but one that later became Moto Guzzi's signature. Unlike the vibrating, oil-leaking machines of its era, this engine ran surprisingly smooth and was engineered with reliability in mind. It wasn't the fastest bike on the road, but it had a level of refinement that most 1960s motorcycles could only dream of. Plus, with its distinctive longitudinally mounted engine, it had a unique visual presence that set it apart from everything else on the market. If you rolled up to a diner on a V7 Special, chances are you'd have people asking, "What the heck is that?" Despite being a great motorcycle, the V7 Special remained rare in the US market for a simple reason: availability. Today, finding one in good condition is like spotting a unicorn. If you do, hold on to it, because not only is it a piece of motorcycling history, but it's also a rolling example of how Italy once tried to shake up the big bike market, with style, sophistication, and just a little bit of stubborn engineering. Number 3. Harley-Davidson Sprint CRS. The Harley-Davidson Sprint CRS is one of those rare gems from the 1960s that most people have never seen in the wild. And honestly, that's part of its charm. Built as a high-performance lightweight racer, this wasn't your average Harley. It didn't have the brawny V-twin or the heavyweight cruiser look. Instead, the Sprint CRS was a feisty little single-cylinder road racer with Italian roots, thanks to Harley's partnership with Aermacchi. Yes, you heard that right. This all-American brand had a serious Italian connection in the 60s, and the CRS was one of the best things to come out of it. What made the Sprint CRS so special? For starters, it was built for racing, with a 250cc four-stroke single that could scream its way around a track with serious speed for its size. Unlike the big Harleys of the time, this bike was all about agility, sharp handling, and keeping weight to a minimum. It had a high-performance camshaft, a Dell'Orto carburetor, and a narrow frame that made it perfect for flat track and road racing. And since it wasn't mass-produced like Harley's mainstream models, it became one of the rarest motorcycles to wear the bar and shield logo. Another reason the Sprint CRS is a unicorn today? It was built for racers, not casual riders. Many of these bikes were ridden hard, modified, or crashed on the track, meaning a well-preserved one is like finding a winning lottery ticket in an old jacket. And let's be honest, most people didn't expect a Harley to look like this. It didn't rumble like a big twin or carry that heavyweight cruiser attitude. It was fast, nimble, and built for competition, which made it a total oddball in the Harley lineup. Today, the Sprint CRS is a collector's dream not just because of its rarity, but because it represents a wild chapter in Harley-Davidson's history. Number 2. BSA Rocket Gold Star. The BSA Rocket Gold Star is one of those rare motorcycles that makes collectors weak in the knees and bank accounts significantly lighter. Produced for a brief window between 1962 and 1963, this British beast was the result of a genius idea, stuffing BSA's burly 646cc super rocket engine into the nimble Gold Star frame. The result? A machine that looked sleek but packed enough punch to keep up with anything on the road back in the day. Think of it as the muscle car of motorcycles, only with a British accent. Why is it so rare? Well, BSA only made around 1,500 of these, and many didn't survive decades of enthusiastic riding. Unlike today's garage queens, these bikes were actually used for what they were built for, tearing up the streets and dominating club races. The Rocket Gold Star wasn't just about speed. It was a beautifully balanced machine that handled well, which was a big deal in an era when some motorcycles felt like they had a mind of their own. Another reason it's so rare? The combination of factory options and aftermarket modifications means that finding an original, unmolested Rocket Gold Star is like finding a $5 bill in a vintage jacket. Possible, but highly unlikely. Owners often tweak them for better performance, racing, or just to make them stand out at the local cafe. Plus, BSA didn't exactly keep a clear-cut parts catalog, so many were pieced together over time with whatever was available. Today, if you stumble across one in good condition, expect to pay a premium. They're highly sought after, not just because of their rarity, but because they represent the peak of British performance bikes before the rise of Japanese dominance. It's a piece of history, a motorcycle that didn't just go fast but looked stunning while doing it. Number 1. Honda CR93. The Honda CR93 is one of those motorcycles that make collectors and vintage racing enthusiasts weak in the knees. Built in the early 1960s, this 125cc factory racer was Honda's way of flexing its engineering muscles, proving that small displacement bikes could punch way above their weight. And boy did it deliver. With a high-revving, twin-cylinder DOHC engine capable of hitting an astonishing 13,000 revolutions per minute, at a time when many cars struggled to cross 6,000, it was a mechanical marvel. What makes the CR93 ridiculously rare is that Honda never mass-produced it. Unlike today's sport bikes that roll out of factories by the tens of thousands, only around 200 CR93 were ever made. And of those, most were raced hard, crashed, modified, or simply lost to time. Finding one today in good condition is like spotting a unicorn at a gas station. The bike itself was designed to be raced right out of the crate, featuring a 5-speed gearbox, a lightweight frame, and a dry weight of just over 200 pounds. On the track, the CR93 was an absolute menace in its class. In the hands of skilled riders, it dominated 125cc competitions, particularly in Europe and Japan, where it squared off against the best two-strokes of the era. The engine may have been small, but it screamed like an angry swarm of bees and delivered a top speed of around 100 miles per hour, blisteringly fast for a 125cc in the early 60s. Today, the Honda CR93 is a collector's dream. If one pops up for sale, expect an eye-watering price tag, assuming you can even find one. It represents a golden era when Honda was rewriting the rules of motorcycle racing, one high-revving, rare-as-hell masterpiece at a time. So, if you're considering joining the ranks of Road Glide owners, be prepared for a ride that may end sooner than expected.